Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar, Present Yourself with Confidence, Inner and Outer Strategies. My name is Marie Gervais, and I will explain to you some interesting things about confidence that you might not have known during this webinar, and a few tips and tricks that can help you. What I do is I build online learning for leadership and for intercultural competency in the workplace. I like to design workplace learning curriculum so that people can be happy at work and can strategize to build better business outcomes, or in the case of individuals, strategize to have a better career and to advance along their career path. So today what we're going to cover is a few inner and outer strategies about confidence. The first one is why we lack confidence, 3 reasons why we lack confidence and what to do about them. And then the next one is about presenting yourself, just a few key themes. Then we go back to inner strategies by using pull and push speech patterns and softeners and hardeners, which is quite useful when you start becoming conscious of using them. And then the last thing is about formal presentations, your impact and the impact of the audience on you, and how to use them both more effectively. So let's get started. The first section, of course, part 1, is why people lack confidence and what we can do about it. It starts with the premise that we really are what we think, and confidence is not something that you're only born with or only have access to if you would have had a lot of experiences that nurtured your sense of self-esteem when you were a child. You can build confidence no matter who you are and at any stage in the game. And that's exactly what you do to get it. Confidence is built out of a repertoire of experience. And that repertoire of experience, when it's framed correctly, builds confidence. If you frame it incorrectly, because of poor thinking habits or things that sabotage your success, then you don't build confidence. So today we're going to talk about how to use your thinking to build confidence. One of the things to focus on right from the start is that your emotions are not facts. You have a huge component of yourself that is not only emotion. And a lot of times people will say, oh, I'm not driven by emotions, I just follow the facts. That's not true, because you actually can't even find a fact that you want to communicate with someone unless you have an emotional response to it, which is kind of interesting research. However, you can think, you can act, you can learn, and you are a complex and interesting, sophisticated, intricate organism. And you can be in control of that organism, or you can let the things that the organism is producing control you. So decide that you are going to be in charge of your decisions and use your feelings to inform those decisions instead of letting your feelings control you. And that's the first step towards having a more confident personality and being more confident in a variety of contexts. So 3 reasons that we lack confidence are either we don't have any experience with a new context and we're a little bit uncertain, and that uncertainty makes us look for ways that we can be on guard. And that's a mechanism that was built in so that we pay attention to danger. So if you're in a new situation, you don't want to waltz into the jaws of the lion, so to speak. You want to be able to check out danger when it comes up. So if you think about that, you think, well, if I were in the wilds having to survive right now, or if I were in the middle of a war zone, I would have to be on full alert to make sure that I don't step into a landmine or something like that. And so that's something that you can, however, overcome by saying, I'm not in a danger zone right now. I'm just in a context where I need to learn something new. So we'll talk about that some more. The second reason we lack confidence is fear of failure and of losing face in front of others. And it's just huge. The idea that we could humiliate ourselves and disappoint others is such a large fear. And it's not something we're ever really going to overcome, because nobody likes to look bad. And the older you get, the more you become focused on the fact that you need to present a professional image. And if at some point that image looks like it might be tarnished, it's very difficult to go forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to get past that. It's not that you will lose it, but you can get past it and move on to something more productive. And then the third one, and this is the one people really believe that they're not doing, but it is often sabotaging their confidence, is they keep defaulting to old experience. And that experience is no longer valid. So if you've had an experience when you were younger or earlier on in your career, and that experience is something that was negative, you can default back to it, and it may be entirely inappropriate because that is no longer the case. You're a new person, this is a new context, and you have new skills now. So the old experience is not serving you in the same way it did at the time when you were just responding to potential danger. So let's go on to expand a little bit on each of those three reasons. When you have no experience in a situation, you feel like, I've never done this before, you're worried about messing up, you don't know what's going on, you're worried you might not be able to learn the new skills, and ultimately the biggest fear is, what if I lose my job over this? And what if I become unemployable? You don't want to embarrass yourself, you don't want other people to think you're incompetent, and we're also worried about whether people will like us and if we don't belong. So all of those things play into the lack of experience. So this is what you can do about it. Be aware of your feelings. That's always the first step. Say, you know what, I feel this right now. I feel scared, I feel intimidated, I feel like I don't know anything here, and that other people are so much more experts than I am. Name those things to yourself. You don't need to say them out loud to anybody else, but to yourself you need to say them in your mind or actually using your voice. And when you do that, you take the first step forward because you've acknowledged that you have a feeling about something. And then you think about your experience that you are gaining as a journey, and that you have to build that road before you can use it. So unlike this avatar icon where you're just rolling out the road in front of you, a road of experience needs to be built, and it usually looks messy in the beginning. So don't worry if it's not linear or that you're not making a gradual increase of experience that you can visibly mark with milestones, because actually experience is really more like the neurons and synapses in the brain, where it looks like a network and things start to fire up, and for a long time it looks messy, and then all of a sudden order begins to create itself as new pathways become established and as the road becomes built and you learn from the different phases of that experience. So think about the experience as being a road building project, and that you have different phases in it, and you can relax into that project and gain experience with each piece of the journey and congratulate yourself as you move along. So you choose the destination of your experience. What do you want to get out of it? Outline the strategy of where you'd like to be at the end, plan the phases, identify what equipment and team members and funds you might need. And as you make progress, recognize those milestones. If you have an obstacle, tell yourself, you know, this is just temporary. I am on the road of experience building, and there are going to be a few bumps on the road. That's just the nature of a road. And be patient with yourself. All roads lead to Rome, and Rome wasn't built in a day. And so all of those things take some time. And as you gain each piece, you're going to be fine with gaining that piece, and you'll be surprised after a period of time, say a month, 2 or 3 months, or a little bit longer, and you look back and you go, hey, I can do all these things I couldn't do before, and I just feel more confident about all of that. But it does take a conscious effort. If you just keep thinking of yourself as being the green one on the team, you're not going to gain confidence. You need to think of yourself as being in the process of this road build experiment, and keep that project moving. So the way to develop self-confidence, according to William Jennings Bryan, is to do that thing you fear and get a record of successful experiences behind you. And that's just it. Take a step into the fear and start collecting your successful experiences behind you. And that's what builds your confidence. In studies that have been done with children who have a lot of disadvantages in their lives, learning disabilities and all sorts of issues, a lot of times what was found about their increase in self-esteem was that as soon as they had a few skills that they could point to, their self-esteem went much higher. And it's quite intimately linked to confidence, that when you have a few things that you can identify as skills you can do, your confidence gets stronger. So let's go on to the next section. Oh, one little quote reminder: the expert in anything was once a beginner. Every expert starts from the beginning. Nobody knows everything from the get-go. And this is a common problem with many adults because we basically feel that we shouldn't have to go through the learning process because we're already adults, but that's just not the way it goes. Both children and adults have to learn, and adults, in fact, take many more repetitions than children do. Children take 67 repetitions to learn a new skill, a simple skill, and adults will take twice that amount. So, The second reason we have a lack of confidence is fear, failure, and loss of face. And we're worried we'll look bad and that other people will see us as being incompetent and that we aren't good people. And this is pretty important because the adult ego is based on two things. I am good and I am capable. And if you at some point feel that your goodness or your competence is being threatened, then you are going to have a lot of trouble moving forward, because that's how the adult ego evolves. So you may think, I may never recover from this issue. It's going to be the end of my career. I've completely humiliated myself. How can I show myself in public? It's just very disconcerting. So the way to move forward with this one, again, starts in the same way, acknowledging your fears. I can't emphasize that enough. Because when you name your fears, that's how they lose their power. You shine a light on that monster in the closet, which is your fear or your fears. And when you do that, you shrink the monster. Or in fact, you realize that there was no monster in the first place and that it's just a closet. So then you picture yourself in the best case scenario. Imagine that everybody's really enjoying your presentation. They're really enjoying meeting you. They love you. You're part of the gang. And you take one step forward towards your image of success. You don't have to accomplish that whole image of success at once. In fact, the more you imagine it, the more detail you put into it, and the closer you'll get to it. But you can't hold on to the images that it has to happen that way or it won't work. You just take one step forward into that image of success. Shine the light on your fear, which is the monster in the closet, by naming it. That shrinks the monster and allows you to take one step into the better scenario. But if you can't imagine the better scenario, it will be difficult to move past the fear of losing face. Eleanor Roosevelt was the wife of one of the presidents of the United States a long time ago, and she faced many difficulties. She had a lot of physical issues. She had a lot of people that worked against her, and she was trying to work for social causes and social equity in a time when everybody thought that was a very bad idea. And so she said, you gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You're able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror, and I can take the next thing that comes along. So let's be like Eleanor Roosevelt and look fear in the face and say, I lived through this, I can take anything that comes along. And another thing to help us see the actual situation is that we don't want to make a big deal out of nothing. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Don't make an elephant out of a fly. And people also say, don't sweat the small stuff, and everything is the small stuff. Even something that seems like a big deal is just small stuff in the context of the greater picture of the entire universe and the entire trajectory of the human race. So place yourself into that picture and say, you know what? I'm not going to make a big deal out of this. I can move past it. You don't have to see the whole thing in front of you and measure out every step. You just need to take one step up that staircase. And as you do it, you start to find the strength and the courage to do the next one. In the gym, I'm doing an exercise routine that's called CrossFit, and they tell you you can handle anything for 30 seconds. And then after you've gotten past that, they say you can handle anything for 60 seconds. And then when you've gotten past that, they say you can do any kind of a difficult routine if it's just for 10 minutes. And they keep building it up like that. And that's what you need to do too. You take the first step and then you move up to the rest, and you develop inner muscle as you go along. Third reason is forcing old frames into new paintings. Every day of your life, you're creating a new painting of experience, but you may be putting the wrong frame on it to put it up on the wall. And one way to see if you're doing that is if you find yourself saying things like, oh, we've done that in the past, or I did that and it never worked, or that's the way people are. Or you might say, well, it really hurt in the past and it's going to hurt now, so I'm not even going to try. And another one is every song worth writing has already been written. And this is a good way to look at this is everyone in their teenage years has favorite songs, and those songs stick with them throughout their entire lives. And if they haven't thought about it, people still think, even when they're many, many years older, that the best songs were the songs that they heard when they were teenagers, even if they weren't very good songs. But those particular songs stick in their mind, and they color every other musical experience that they have. And so in order to move forward with that, we need to listen to more music and start recognizing the good things that are coming up instead of assuming that everything that's coming up needs to fit into an old song format that we would have experienced in our past. And the way to move forward with that is to think of yourself as being a box. Are you closing the lid of opportunity by making yourself a closed, tied-up box? Or are you opening the lid of the opportunity to the horizon of possibility? So open yourself up to the horizon of possibility. You may be in a box, but you can open up the top and look out to the sky and move forward. In fact, studies that have been done on the effectiveness of employee training in large corporations have shown that people who have a future and outward orientation learn faster and better and have much more sustainability from the training than people who have an inward closed orientation. So that orientation is very important. See past experience as part of the journey, but not the entire journey, and that you are still on that path of experience and moving forward. See any failures that you experience, because people do have challenges and they also have failures. Sometimes they have spectacular failures, like bankruptcies or multiple divorces. See that as being your tuition fee for a life. And that tuition fee is that's in the service of building your inner muscle. If you don't go through that and make it a post-transformative experience for yourself instead of a post-traumatic experience, you can't reframe it. Reframe experience in the sense of how can I transform from this experience, and regularly replace negative thoughts with affirmations telling yourself you can do it. And as you do, you will gain in confidence. So think of every new day and every new skill that you acquire as a new painting, and make sure you have the right frame on top of it, and make sure that the next painting has a new frame, not one of the old ones. So, no man ever steps in the same river twice. It's not the same river, and he's not the same man. And remembering that helps us to move forward and not get stuck in some negative thinking pattern. So, we just covered the 3 reasons why people have lack of confidence, lack of experience, fear of failure and fear of losing face in front of others, and then putting old frames onto new paintings. And so now we're going to look at how to present yourself with confidence from the external standpoint. So it is very important to think about how you appear, because that appearance can also affect your inner self. You can make changes to your life in 2 ways. You can look inside, or you can start from the outside. Both ways work. Either way, the inside goes out and the outside goes in. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for congruence between those 2. This is a story about Jim and the TV interview. Jim was a radio announcer. He had a lot of success, and he went every day to work wearing a suit. People laughed at him because they said, "This is radio, nobody can see you." But he didn't say anything about it. He just kept wearing his suits when he was going to work. And one day, the boss of the radio station said to him, "You have been asked to consider an interview for being a television anchor for the news." And so that was a big opportunity for Jim, and he was excited to go. And when he was getting ready to go, his boss said, "Make sure you're on time, because tomorrow's a big day for you." So the next day, Jim usually was on time. In fact, he was usually early. He came 5 minutes late, and his boss was getting quite worried. And he said, "Jim, what happened to you? You're always early, or just right on the dot on time. And how come you're late? This is such an important day." And Jim said, "Well, I had to go buy new socks." And his radio announcer said, "What are you talking about? Why do you need socks?" And he said, "Well, whenever I do something important, I always make sure that I start out that new important thing with new socks. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable on the television interview if I didn't have new socks." And his boss said to him, "But that's just crazy, because nobody's going to see your socks. The camera is focusing on your shoulder and your head. They won't even go down to your waist. So why would it matter?" And Jim said, "It doesn't matter to anybody but me. And if I feel that I'm at my best, I know I'll be able to give my best to the audience, and they are going to benefit from it." So the reason this is really interesting is Jim had principles, and he followed those principles. He didn't adjust the principle to his behavior. He adjusted his behavior to the principle. His principle was to look prepared so I can feel prepared, and he did it all the time. The other thing was to be prepared. That was his other principle. He also wanted to have an appearance of being professional, and to have that come from the inside, which is your demeanor, he had to actually make sure he had all the pieces in place. And because he wanted to provide good value to the audience, he did that. It's not because it was just about him. It was about, he wanted to make sure he was providing good value to the audience. So all of these things are part of the whole picture of presenting yourself with confidence. So what should you wear? You wear something that makes you look professional and that makes you feel powerful. So you're not wearing something that, if you're going to do an important presentation, you don't wear your whatever clothes. You wear something that makes you feel powerful. Now, this is different for each person, but generally speaking, you take one step up from what you would normally wear in that situation. That's not an interview situation. So if you have work clothes that are casual, you make a step up to wear a tie or to wear a suit jacket if you're a woman, and different kinds of accessories. If you are in the trades, you take one step up to, instead of wearing your trade coveralls, to wearing casual slacks and and a new clean shirt. So you take one step up to make the presentation. I was making a presentation the other day to a group of people that have a construction company. So I didn't wear a three-piece, fantastic, amazing suit and spiky high heels to go to that, because it would have been out of context. But I did take one step up, and I wore a nice outfit. But the outfit was appropriate to the circumstance, but just a little bit higher. So that's what you want to think about when you're making any kind of an impression. When you do a presentation, you can go a little bit higher. If you go too crazy, you will look like you're trying to show off. So the power suits generally, if people, when they write articles about power suits, it's always they're dark, they're conservative. Men might have a splash of red somewhere, and women generally have less jewelry and less accessories, so that they look like they're really focusing more on the job and less on their appearance. But the appearance should be straightforward, clean, and look professional, direct people to a sense of competence. Now, when you're meeting people, you want to make sure that you're showing, if let's say you're just doing this for an interview, or you're going to be doing a small presentation rather than a large one. We're getting to the large one in a minute. You want to make sure that you're showing interest in that other person, that you make them feel valued. That is really important, no matter what kind of a presentation you do. Smile at the audience, look out at everybody and think, wonderful people, I can hardly wait to meet them. Think of ways you can make them feel valued, and you will move past your own lack of confidence towards worrying more about how you can help the other people in that room feel important, and that will help you to be more confident. So smile, be friendly, shake hands firmly, stand tall, sit tall, hold your head high. All of those things are outer things that will help you. And the last piece is something that I have taught people when I was teaching drama, and also for public speaking skills, and that is that you try to take a certain amount of psychological space that's larger than what you normally would. So most people have about maybe 20 to 30 centimeters of space around them, psychological space. But when you're presenting, you try to take up 5 times more than that. So you imagine that there's a force field around you, and then that imaginary force field is your psychological sense of authority. And you just imagine that that is bigger around you, and you will automatically start to exude it. I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute. So this woman is very engaging. She looks like she's really interested in you. And that is exactly the kind of face you want to have when you start out. Maybe when you're in the middle of your presentation, you're presenting a lot of facts and figures and you're being very serious about it. But when you start that presentation, you have to look like you're engaging and make sure that people want to listen to you. And they won't want to listen to you if you stand there with a really solid, serious face and look very disconnected from the audience. So engage with the audience psychologically. Make sure that you are actually present to them before you start speaking. Now, a few things about preparation. I can't stress enough how important it is to prepare, but there are multiple pieces to the preparation. The first part is research. Second part is practicing the content. Third part is thinking of ways to engage the audience throughout the presentation. What would make them more interested? What kinds of stories, what kinds of questions, and what kinds of references would help them to be even more engaged? And think about it from your standpoint. What have you liked and not liked when you were in the audience? What kinds of things did you find boring? You certainly don't want to repeat those things. Another thing that's important is if you are given the option to sit or stand when you're presenting, always stand. It's just you have a lot more authority and sense of expertise if you are standing. Sitting loses energy, and the audience interest goes down as soon as you sit. So I always dislike watching panel interviews where everybody's sitting down unless it's on television because the camera zooms in for you. But when you're doing it live, standing up is the best way to keep your audience's attention. So the next piece is present for somebody else. Present to a friend and have that friend offer some suggestions. You can also do your presentation in front of a mirror and record it at the same time, which is a little bit helpful too, because you're going to see where you might fall down. And when you get some suggestions from your presentation, make sure that you incorporate them. A lot of times I say, okay, my presentation's ready. Who can I talk this through? So I don't do the whole presentation like I would do it normally, but I talk them through it, and they point out things often that I missed. Finally, if you present in your power suit, practice presenting in your power suit once. You will feel very comfortable when you get back up to do it yourself. So Arthur Ashe wrote, one important key to success is self-confidence, and important key to self-confidence is preparation. So the more prepared you are, the less likely your nerves will sabotage you. Now, here's the inner strategy and outer strategy for using your speech consciously, and I'm going to give you a few tips on that. Pull strategies draw people in and win their trust. Push strategies set you apart as an authority and impress people with your expertise. You need to use those in a culturally appropriate way. Every country has its own expectations for that, and so you need to watch for what that might be. And you need to take your speech patterns and change them into softeners or hardeners depending on what your ultimate goal is. So a softener is a phrase that helps you to build consensus and to be conciliatory and draw people in, and the hardeners are statements that emphasize, enforce, and set boundaries. I'm going to show you some examples. Now, the reason you want to do this, for example, before I get into all of the details, is that when you're strategic about how you speak, you can build confidence in social settings because you've created a framework for the confidence to happen. Otherwise, you feel like it's out of your control. But in this case, when you've built the speech patterns in and you're watching for the signs so that you can add the right speech pattern at the right time, you will feel much more in control of the situation and feel more confident. So here's something that's interesting. Tell me more. What do you think that is, push or pull? It's a pull strategy. And the reason for that is because you're trying to get the other person to talk to you and tell you more. If you say, I graduated from my class with distinction, that is a push strategy because you are emphasizing your own expertise. If you say, would you say your opinion changed given the recent circumstances? That's a pull strategy. You're trying to draw people in. Or you reach the end of a presentation, a sales presentation, and you have had lots of pull strategies and you've been listening a lot to the client, and then they say, well, it's a toss-up between you and the other company. That's when you might say, our expertise in the field remains unchallenged. So then you are emphasizing the fact that you have expertise and you really believe in it. That's a push strategy. If you say, I was wondering, have you ever used this product and what did you think? That's a pull strategy. So using pull and push strategies at the right place and the right time is very important to whether you're going to gain the audience's confidence in you and build your own confidence. So you use pull strategies to invite, connect, and attract, and push when you want to establish your authority. You use pull to validate other people and push to stand out above them. You use pull to obtain information and push to show your own experience and share your information. You use pull to provide value and push to close the sale, the deal, or to close the argument. In Canada, the ratio of pull to push in business conversations is 5 pull to 1 push. So you might make one statement in the beginning saying who you are and what your role is, or your credentials in some way, but generally this is downplayed in Canada to be fairly soft. Then you do a lot to draw the other person in, so you're going to use 5 pull strategies, and at that point you make a push strategy to establish your expertise. This is also something you do in a small group presentation. In a large group presentation, it's not quite the same. because people came to hear you as an expert, and therefore you need to start with a lot more push strategies. So here we have a group of women. Each of them is taking up the psychological space that I was telling you about. You can tell that even though they're standing fairly close to each other, that they each exude a lot of power. They are standing tall. They look confident. They have a slight smile on their face. They look serious, but they also look approachable. And they are wearing power suits. As simple suits, but they're effective. In this group, you can see how they're inviting consensus. They're really interested in getting to know you. They want to hear what you have to say. They can hardly wait till you join them. And the pull strategy invites consensus. So when you're working with a small group, you want to build that sense of consensus within the group. And the way you do that is by using speech softeners and speech hardeners. And just to give you some examples, if you say, "Excuse me, have you almost finished with the copier?" That's a pull strategy. But if you say, "I have an emergency and I need the copier right away," that's a push. If you say, "This is only my opinion and I could be wrong," pull. If you say, "This is where I stand, the facts are clear," push. Do you think you will be able to get that report to me soon? Pull. I expect that report to be in my inbox and a hard copy on my desk by 4 today. Push. So depending on the context, you'd use either the softener or the hardener. And you can sabotage your presentation if you use too many softeners or too many hardeners in the wrong place. So think about it from the standpoint of the other person. You want them to know, like, and trust you, and then you move to something where you're making a statement that's a little bit harder. So they need to know who you are. Do they like you? Do they value your expertise? Are they interested in hearing more? And then you tell them what they came to hear. So, wondering, when should you use the softener? When should you use the hardener? You use the softeners when the team or the group is new. So if you're with a new group of people, you do not start with a whole bunch of hardeners because you're going to turn the whole team off. So you want to draw them in and win trust. If it's a situation where the facts are not clear, opinion is divided, or you need to gather facts, use softeners. If you need consensus and agreement, use softeners. You can also use self-depreciation to be more approachable. That would be like, "Well, I've made mistakes in the past, so somebody help me out here." There's a self-depreciating statement. Or you say, "Something about my presentation style is not working here. What should I do differently?" That's a self-depreciating statement. It helps people to feel that they're closer to you because we're all fallible human beings. Hardeners, on the other hand, enforce accountability. So you're going to go, we have a situation here and we require everybody's input and there will be no exceptions. There's a hardener right there. You're enforcing accountability. It's if you have to demonstrate your expertise because you're an expert witness, you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you have expertise on a certain topic that you need to talk about. Maybe you know more about fixing bicycles than anyone else in the world. Okay, there's your expertise. And so you need to demonstrate that by using hardeners. You also use a hardener when you need to take an authoritative stance, move to action, close a deal, or take a moral stance. So if there's an ethical issue and you use a softener, nobody's going to pay attention to you. If there's an ethical issue and you use a hardener, it will have a lot more effect. You also use more hardeners in a large group presentation and more softeners in a small group presentation. So keep that in mind as a general rule. So, formal presentations. Plan, prepare, perform. Make sure you know what you want to say. Even though people prepare, they don't prepare a strong opening statement and they don't prepare a closure. And so if you can't be really clear in your mind about what you're going to do, what your key points are, and prepare a strong opening statement, you won't be effective. You won't catch the audience. And within the first 5 seconds of your speech, they've already tuned out. So make sure you are really clear about what you want to say and have a strong opening statement. So a strong opening statement might be something like, "I can hardly wait to share this new research with you today." It could be something like, "Today is the best day of my life. Let me tell you why." It can be something like, "Has this ever happened to you?" And then you tell them a story. So start with strength. Then you also need to remember that you should tell the audience what you're going to do, then do exactly what you told them, and then remind them what you've just done. This is the typical North American strategy for giving presentations. People want to see that, otherwise they're lost in the presentation. They don't know where you're going with it. So what are you going to do? Then do it, and then tell them what you just did. Now, the next piece is it's not about you, it's about the audience. And these are some techniques that are going to help you with working with the audience. And it's about focusing on that audience. Who are they? What do you think they need? What would be of value to them when they leave your presentation, that is. So think, what would be something that I really want people to take away with them from my presentation? What's the one point they should definitely remember, or the 3 points? And how do I want them to feel when they leave the presentation? And so then you build around your presentation a climate that is going to allow that to happen. So one way to do that is to tell a story. And I'm going to tell you a story right now about something that happened to me in which I gained confidence. It happened a few years ago, quite a few years ago. I was 13 years old. I was in a new school. I felt very intimidated and small. And one day the principal, who was a very mean person and who constantly humiliated students in public, he also, at that time where they were able to strap students if they thought they were doing something wrong, he called me into his office and without a word told me to put, without a word of explanation, told me to put my hands out. When I put my hands out, he strapped them 20 times on each hand. If you've never had anything like that happen to you before, it's quite abusive. And my hands were swollen to 3 times their size and black and blue for 3 weeks. I never knew what happened because I was not a bad kid. I was scared to death of doing anything, and I was brand new to the school, so I had no idea why he strapped me. And my mother was beside herself. She was so upset. So she made several complaints to the school. Nothing ever really happened as a result or an apology. And I grew up and became a mother and had my own children. And one time the school said they needed 3 parent advocates to come in after school hours to talk to an auditor about the school to say what they liked about the school. So I said, okay, I'd be happy to do that. So I got to the audit, and when I opened the door, lo and behold, it was the same guy who strapped me when I was 13 years old. At that point, I was 20 years older than that, but I was frozen with fear when I saw this man. I'm quite sure he didn't remember me because he abused many students when he was the principal. But I just froze, and I couldn't even open the door. I felt like I'd turned into a piece of ice. And then something in my mind, I said to myself, you know what? I am not the same person, and this is not the same circumstance, and I can do this. And I took one step forward. And that one step unfroze me and allowed me to be able to move forward, sit down, talk to the auditor, tell them about the school with confidence. It was about taking that one step. So now I'm telling you this story because that story is really important for identifying inner, outer, and hidden value needs. So my inner need in that second piece of the story was to feel confident. My outer need was to take a step to get out of my paralysis. And the hidden value was, I am bigger than this small experience. I can do this, right? So those things are all part of the story, which is what makes it a good incident to share. So as you concentrate on your audience's needs and become less focused on your own fears and your own ego, your presentation gets way better and your confidence goes way up. So here's a few examples. Let's say it's about being a car salesman. So the outer need is I need a car to get to the event. The inner need would be I want the car to impress my girlfriend. So have you guessed that the audience here is young men? So the audience is young men. The young man is looking for a new car. He wants to impress his girlfriend. And what's the hidden value? He thinks, you know what, maybe she's going to love me more because I have a nice car. Now, a lot of guys think that girls are really impressed only with the car. Some girls are really impressed with cars, but generally it's the guy they're impressed with, and the car is quite secondary. However, many men really feel that they can impress the girl better if they have a decent car. And so that decent car is something that's very much in their minds attached to being loved. So here's the piece. If you put this into a little sales context, she loves you for who you are, but she'll love you even more when she sees your taste in cars. Our newest BMWs, it's all about the love. So there you're getting right to the root of the problem. If you start right away with the young man audience with that kind of a story, you've got him hooked. Now, let's say it's an older person or a couple and they're looking for a car for their family. They are not going to need, this is going to be the wrong approach for them because they're going to be interested in safety. They're going to be interested in stability. They're going to be interested in, can you get people in and out of the car? Is it practical? Are all the knobs and dials in the right place? Is it easy to get into the motor and fix it? It's a totally different sell. And so you need a story that looks at the inner, outer, and hidden values for that context different than you would if you had an audience of young men who wanted to impress their girlfriends. Here's another example. Let's say you're starting a new job or a new contract and you have to learn some new software. And the software, if you install it yourself and set it all up, it's going to take you even longer. And so your inner need is to learn the software and fast. And the outer need is to get some help with the installation and probably a few tips on getting started so you can get into it faster. The hidden value is if you can get up to speed on the new software, your colleagues will be impressed. And also, you won't lose any time. That's the other thing, because you may be on a tight timeline. So here's the pitch. Get the installation you need fast, so it looks like you already know how our software works. Won't that look impressive? So you want to impress your colleagues. You need to have the software installed fast, and it's necessary to your job. So that all of those three needs are addressed in that statement. Last example, inner need. I feel unhealthy because I'm overweight. Outer, my clothes are too tight. So it's a practical issue as well. A hidden value is, I think I'm a bad person because I can't control my eating habits, and other people might think that too. So I won't be lovable. And that's part of the adult ego, as I mentioned to you before. I won't feel like I'm a good person or a lovable person. So here's something that can approach that quickly. Of course, when you're doing this in a speech, you do it a little bit longer and you draw it out into a story. This is for the purposes of brevity. We're doing this in a kind of a sales format. So I used to be overweight and felt bad about myself because my clothes were too tight. It's as if everyone was thinking, can't he even control his eating habits? Have you ever experienced this humiliation? So there you've got your audience right away, because there are very few people that haven't had some kind of a weight issue at some point in their lives. They may be over or underweight, and they're worried about what people think about when they see them over and or underweight state. So now you're thinking, oh, well, you know what, I'm an engineer, or I'm doing a medical presentation, and these kinds of things that's not my thing, right? I mean, I'm not going to be telling those kinds of stories, but I disagree. You have to find the human element in whatever it is that you're presenting to hook people in. I'm going to give you an example of a presentation that I saw that really affected me. And it was a presentation about a manufacturer who manufactures medical machines. And the medical machines are all about women's health. So I was in a manufacturing conference, and I was expecting to have all of the technicalities of the manufacturing of medical machines explained to me, but that's not what I got started out with. So the presentation started out with a picture of a story of a man, and the man himself talked about how he lost his mother to cancer, his wife to heart disease, and his daughter to some other issue, and that was the reason he was so dedicated to producing reliable medical machines that could save other people's lives. So just like everyone was so hooked into that, totally hooked, because he addressed everybody's deepest values, inner needs, and shared something personal about himself that really got people into the story. And then after that, when he started to talk about the different machines and what they did and how they manufactured them and how that story tied into the manufacturing, everyone was beside themselves with attention. Like nobody missed a thing. And we all remembered what he had to present to us from a technical standpoint because he hooked us in from that human standpoint. You can do the same thing with your presentations. Think about your audience. It's more about them than it is about you. So this is what we covered. We covered 3 reasons people lack confidence and what you can do about them. And how to present yourself, a few basics on the outer pieces. Then we looked at the inner part of controlling and strategizing for hardeners and softeners so you get a pull or a push effect on your audience. And finally, we looked at your preparation and then preparation in thinking about the audience and meeting those audience needs. I hope this was helpful for you. So we're almost out of time, and I wanted to alert you to a few things that are also going to be a benefit so that you can learn more about the topic. Nelda Schulte has written some fantastic things about preparing yourself to speak well. And she teaches public speaking and presentation, and she's helped many people hone their personal brand and their personal presentation capacity. And so you can see her article. She has a guest blog on our website, and it's called 5 Disastrously Common Bad Meeting Presentation Mistakes and What You Can Learn from Them. So you can go there, and on that article, and also on the bottom of this slide, you can find out about her ebook, which is probably the best thing I have ever seen written about how to present. It covers everything from what to do if your technology fails, to setting up the room, to strategies for preparing your speech and getting to know the audience better. It's just fantastic, and it's only $9.95, so you can download it. So you can get her blog post for free, of course, and then you can go to the link if you're interested in the book, which is definitely worthwhile. Next thing is that our company has 5 really great mini courses. They're mobile learning bursts, so 15 minutes a day lessons, 20 lessons per theme. And each of those online course lessons helps to build confidence in different areas of leadership. So there's managing your boss, so having a more effective and useful relationship with your boss through a bunch of techniques that you can use. There's leading for results, so that's about how to use metrics and how to use metrics for changes towards a business outcome. There's building your team, which is about, as it suggests, having a strong, capable team and recognizing their talents. There's meeting targets and diagnosing team performance. And then there's mindfulness and how you can actually move forward by dealing with things really on time without being stressed about the difficulties. And then besides that, we also have an extra bonus, and the bonus is effective meetings. And so this is it's about bringing out the talents in your team through a meeting. So, and getting to more effective meetings, which many people need to do because so much of our time is wasted in ineffective meetings. So the Quick Study Manager themes here, there are 5 of them. And then there's also the effective meetings theme, and all of those come together in one $50 a month subscription. So it's really a bonus and helps you to invest in your professional development. Even if you're not in a leadership position, this will help you to gain the confidence that you need to get there. So take charge of your professional development and take a look at our Quick Study Manager building. There's a video and course description, and you can take a look at it and see if that's for you. So with regard to gaining confidence and presenting with confidence, it's about practice. Practice with reflection, of course, as we talked about today. Amateurs practice until they get it right, but pros practice until they can't get it wrong. So be a pro and keep practicing until your presentations feel really strong. Thank you very much for joining me today. Here's the contact information if you'd like to get in touch with me. And you can also join our LinkedIn network group, which is called Canadian Workplace Culture. Love to see you there. And looking forward to the next chance I get to present and to enjoy your company online. Bye-bye.